Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Hello. How are you doing today, Mike?
Oh, I'm really excited about this evening. Friday night, we've got a release party in Madison. New music that people are going to hear for the first time on this podcast today.
It's a big day for us.
It is a
release party days are always so fun.
And it was just my birthday, and it's the birthday party tonight, and that always gets me excited.
Happy birthday, Mike.
Thank you very much. You know what would be the best birthday present of all, Wendy?
What would that be, Mike?
That would be rating the podcast on iTunes. So saying something nice about See You on the Other Side on iTunes would probably be the nicest thing that someone could do for me for my birthday this year.
Oh my gosh, that would be really thoughtful, wouldn't it?
I think so.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye out for that. And remember, if you do like the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. And that'll make Mike's birthday extra special.
It's the only thing that can make me want to live again is to have a positive review on iTunes. Please do it for me.
Wow. And if you don't have iTunes, you can also do that on Stitcher, or you can just send us an email. So that makes us happy too.
Yeah, definitely makes us
happy. All right. So what are we talking about today, Mike?
Today we're talking about one of my favorite things, and that's Satanism.
I had no idea that was one of your favorite things, and I thought I knew you pretty well.
No, well, it's one of my favorite topics of paranormal conversation because I think that, so we grew up in the 1980s during what's called the Satanic Panic.
Whoa.
So if you remember
Sally
Jesse Raphael.
Oh, I do.
Or you remember Geraldo Rivera, they used to talk about Satan worshipers being around us, and this really had to do with, a lot of the conservative sensibilities at the time, especially in the South, and these Christian ministries, especially the televangelists, would talk about Satanism as a fearful thing in our society, and people were worshiping the devil, and they were killing babies and doing horrible things. So make sure you send money to our cause. Make sure you send money to our ministry so we can fight these Satanists.
Oh, okay. So it was a ploy.
We'd see all this stuff on TV, and I remember seeing all this stuff on TV as a kid, and I'd be like, oh my God, Satan worshipers, they're out there. They're coming for you. Geraldo Rivera told me about this. Okay.
And he's a reputable reporter now.
You're right. Geraldo Rivera, he's a real reputable guy. Just ask whoever was in charge of Al Capone's vaults.
That's right.
How reputable. Oh. I watched that live on TV. I'm like, man, I'm gonna see what's going on with Al Capone's vaults, and then we find out what happens with it.
It's cool stuff.
And it's nothing. He gets in there, and it's like, I found a bunch of dust and some paper. Thank you, Geraldo, for what you've done.
Mwah, 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 mwah.
That's really how it was. And, okay. So
legit sad trombone.
Satanism in the 1980s. You grew up thinking that there were devil worshippers out there who were going to get you. And it was in movies. So Rosemary's Baby from the late 1960s is Satanism infecting, devil worshippers they were doctors, they were PTA members, they were people in your society. Satan worshipers were all around you. Okay, well, let's fast forward to a more sober decade, the 1990s, and let's talk about the fact that we find out that all this satanic ritual abuse, and we'll talk about this in an episode, because the Satanic Panic has a lot to do with art and heavy metal and all this stuff that happened in the 1980s. Heavy metal bands used Satanism as marketing to be rebellious to a lot of these kids during this panicky time during the 1980s. And we will talk about the way that art used Satanism as imagery. But we find out that there weren't really any devil worshippers. That was all just made up BS.
Okay.
Um,
Propaganda.
yeah, and so the fact is, though, even though there might not have been any devil worshippers around, the Church of Satan is still a thing. The Church of
Wait, okay,
Satan.
so there aren't Satan worshippers, but there is a Church of Satan.
Yes, there is. And that's what we're going to talk about today. That's why the name of the episode, Satanism, Sinister, or Just Selfish.
I thought we were going to name it Satanic Panic.
Satanic Panic gets its own episode. Because that's what they talked about, the stuff in the 80s. And that will go into Dungeons and Dragons.
Ah, yes, okay.
And all the kind of crazy stuff that people, the propaganda that was used for political machinations back in the 1980s and also for fundraising. So, but the Church of Satan is actually a lot less sinister and dangerous than it sounds. Because when you think Church of Satan, Wendy, what comes into your head?
I picture like a bunch of people dancing around a fire and like sacrificing something and pentagrams and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like people in robes. Like, yeah, it's the sacrificing thing too. So like a ritual.
Blood.
Yeah, you picture blood, you picture a dagger, something out of a movie. You ever see End of Days? That movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger versus the devil at the end of the world?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
I'll add it to my Netflix queue.
You're not missing a great movie. The only thing you're really missing out of it is the last Guns N' Roses song released before Chinese Democracy. Was from the soundtrack of that movie.
Wow.
And it actually was a really good Guns N' Roses song. I still have it in my workout mix. Huh. It's called Oh My God. And it's a good GNR song. So that's besides the Guns N' Roses song, that's about the best thing about that movie. But that they do the whole the devil is coming, there's devil worshippers, there's ritualistic daggers and sacrifices and all that kind of crap that we associate with devil worshippers.
Okay, but the Church of Satan is not that.
No, the Church of Satan, I know that we sound like apologists for the I'm just like, hey guys, I know what you think about the devil, but let's talk about the church. Like it's...
No, I'm just genuinely curious because when you hear Church of Satan, I mean, in a church, what do? You worship something or someone or a deity, and when you say you're the Church of Satan, then...
And Satan and modern Satanists are really just atheists. So they're they're just atheists who are using the trappings of Satan to ritualize things that are the exact opposite of Christianity. So that'd be the first thing that when you talk about Satanists, it's not the fact that they actually worship the devil. It's the fact that they're the opposite of Christianity. And so to get that, we really have to go back to the 1960s and the founding of the modern Church of Satan. So, I mean, there was a lot of mystical stuff going on in the 1960s, especially in San Francisco. So when you think about cultural epicenters of the hippie movement, the anti-war movement, the underground against the American mainstream that was happening with the baby boomers, that was all centered around San Francisco. Whether it's going to be, the music, the Grateful Dead, that's the Bay Area, the Grateful Dead, and the film, or the biggest kind of art and culture that was against the mainstream, against the war, against it all came out of San Francisco in the 1960s. You know that song, are you going to make sure to put a flower in your hair. Right, it's all...
Yeah, it was on the Forrest Gump soundtrack.
It is, right, and Forrest Gump, they make a stop in the Bay Area, obviously, because that's really the center of the movement, the counterculture against the mainstream. So, if you have the quasi-religious hippie movement, Jesus is just all right with me, man. And, And, Jesus never dropped a bomb, flowers, flower power, people against the war, and there certainly was an excellent religious case against the Vietnam War.
Right.
You'd think that, somebody who didn't buy into the entire religious movement might also want the opposite of the mainstream, but maybe not be as entranced by the hippies.
Oh, okay.
And that was a guy by the name of Anton LaVey. So Anton LaVey was, he's born in Chicago, but then raised in California. And he was born in, 1930. So he was right there, during the 1960s, during the great, that was the great movement against, the mainstream that was brought to us by the Second World War of clean cut. And you got to listen to the government, and you got to do whatever they say. And the draft is okay. We're going to send you off to war. And, in World War II, you might have been killing Nazis who were doing horrible things. In Vietnam, you were killing the Viet Cong, and we weren't sure exactly why we were going over. We thought that communism might eventually take over Japan, and we'd lose Japan as a trading partner. The domino theory, lose the entire East, the Far East, and the Orient. We don't use the word Orient anymore, but we would lose that area as a trading partner, and then the entire American way of life was threatened. But people, that kind of explanation as to why they were being sent into a rice paddy and being killed wasn't good enough for most Americans at the time. And that's why, that's this entire movement just around the very opposite of what the mainstream was. And that was what guys like Anton LaVey were talking about. Anton LaVey shaved his head and grew a goatee just so he'd look more evil.
The goat.
Yeah, and he could found the Church of Satan, which was a system about human nature and doing things for yourself and selfishness. That was the exact opposite of Christianity, the exact opposite of being a hippie. So hippies were all about, well, it depends. And so, I'm sure you're familiar with Ayn Rand.
Yes.
And the Fountainhead. And, she wrote a work called The Virtue of Selfishness. It was all about your own, it was all about you over others.
Everyone for himself.
Yeah. And also, remember, we kind of have in the 2010s and over the last 20 years, now that there's no Iron Curtain, now that there are no socialist countries, we kind of have we look back at socialism and communism with rose-colored glasses. In that, these things that were when they tried these experiments of socialism and communism in these countries, we try to think, well, yeah, it was pretty bad and it didn't work out very well. But, they had their hearts in the right place. Well, at the time, if you go back to the, 1950s and 60s, so this past couple of weeks, they've celebrated the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, right?
That's insane.
Right, I know, and that makes you feel old. That's 25 years since the Berlin Wall fell. But people were murdered trying to cross the Berlin Wall to see their relatives.
Yeah, that's hard to believe.
These grand experiments that we think of, that we don't think of as so harshly now, resulted in the murder of a lot of people. And Chairman Mao and Joseph Stalin killed, way more people than even a monster like Hitler did. And so the thing is, collectivism in the middle of the 20th century was considered dangerous, scary. You had Joseph McCarthy, our proud Wisconsin senator, that was about as against communism as you can get and went over the line with it. Mm-hmm. But what I mean to say is, even though we think that selfishness sounds like such a horrible thing, and all these writers, like Ayn Rand, when she was talking about it,
they were looking at it from a different angle, obviously, than what we have today.
Perspective. I mean, they were seeing these collectivist countries murder people, and
right.
she escaped Soviet Russia, which was obviously, anti-Semitic, and then what Stalin did to anybody with any kind of education, the camps, they'd put people into stalags, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm just trying to say that even though selfishness from a 21st century perspective looks like it's a very thoughtless way of being, at the time they were thinking about things. And guys like Anton LaVey, when they were, the ideas of the Church of Satan were just about the self over the group, which is the difference between that and Christianity. Christianity is about altruism. Christianity is about sacrificing yourself for other people.
Selflessness.
You're exactly right, Wen. Selflessness. And, it's like when I talk about the church to my mother. And, my mother's a very faithful Catholic and goes to church every single week, and she hasn't missed a week. When she misses a week, she's guilty about it. And she hasn't missed a week since like 1945.
Wow, that's incredible.
Right. And so I ask her, I'm like, well, even without all the rules, because you ask about, like, what about all the rules of the church and all these things? She's like, well, that stuff isn't as important as the idea that we do things for other people. So we perform sacrifices for other people to make their life better, and that's the reward we get out of the church. The Church of Satan is the exact opposite. It's that we do things for ourselves. Do what you want, and that's what counts. It's the real difference between Satanists and any other kind of religion.
So it's almost like if you replace the word Satan with something else and try to think of it that way, as opposed to, like,
exactly right,
dancing around the devil guy. That's like, what was that movie? Hellboy or something? I don't know. But so when you think of it that way, then it's really more of a movement, a philosophy, than it is something
that's right. And there's
scary and magic, and
there's famous, and what they use magic. Let's go. First of all, the Church of Satan can't be that dangerous because they have an FAQ. Any countercultural movement that has an FAQ on the internet and graphics made, obviously the Church of Satan has a social media person, right?
Well,
and how dangerous can you be if you've got somebody on the payroll who's dedicated to Facebook? Like, I got to handle. Oh no, I got to handle the
very
church.
Dangerous.
I got to handle the Church of Satan Facebook page. I was looking, and our likes are down for this week.
Well, hey, social media has been used for a lot of bad things, so.
No, absolutely.
So saying it's not bad because they use social media is not really.
That's true. And saying the internet can't be used for evil purposes. And what I mean is,
right.
Like, how scary can something be if the scariest thing you have is the Church of Satan? Their website has great graphics too. churchofsatan.com. They've got, it looks like
Mike,
a really good, well done page.
Did they hire you to promote them?
Absolutely not.
You sound very like a commercial kind of right now.
I am definitely not paid for from the Church of Satan. They are not a sponsor of the show, but I do think they are unfairly maligned by a lot of people in this society. And that's what I mean. It's that the Satanists are just about themselves. They're not actually about doing harm to other people. So that's what I'm, was talking about.
I
here.
see. Okay.
And their website looks you can't deny that Satanists hire excellent graphic designers. Good for that. Good on them.
Well, that's excellent to know.
Well, we should
aside from designing good websites, what do they do? What kinds of things?
So Satan to them represents something. It's the opposite of Christianity. And let's talk about their FAQ. When they talk about satanic rituals and the Black Mass and satanic magic, quote unquote.
Okay.
So this is directly from their website. What is a satanic ritual? Greater magic, which is our name for ritual practice, is basically meant as self-transformational psychodrama. It serves as a means to purge oneself of unwanted emotional baggage that might be hindering a daily pursuit of joy in life. We do not require anyone accept it for more than what it is. It's pageantry, it's ritual. It doesn't mean anything. So when they do a mass and they dress up in robes and they act silly and stuff like that, it's not meant to actually be real. Like in Catholic Church, when they give you communion and you drink that wine has been literally transformed to the blood of Jesus Christ. You are drinking the blood of Jesus Christ, literally, in the church.
Literally.
Yeah. And so when you, and that's what they say, it's called transubstantiation. Wine into blood, and then the bread into his body. And so the Satanic Church uses that same kind of, they don't claim that it's real though. Like the Catholic Church does. They don't claim that you're actually drinking the blood of Satan or whatever. I don't know what you drink. I've never been to a satanic mass and I don't really plan on it. But
they drink that furious hell.
Right, the surly hell. That's right.
Or surly. Yes.
Minnesota, one of Minnesota's finest beers. The surly hell, if you ask me.
But okay, back to the topic. So they don't drink, they don't do the wine and bread thing, but they have other types of things they do as so what is the point? You were saying that for the Catholic Church, these things represent things.
Yes, they represent
traditions.
In the Catholic Church, it's represent so you become one with God. You are drinking you are drinking God's blood. And that's the point. So when you have communion, it's communion with that thing that's greater than you. And so the Church of Satan is the same kind of thing with their rituals, their magic. But they just, like they said, it's a self-transformational psychodrama. It's just meant for your head. It's just meant for you. Like when we have the graduation ceremony. Wendy, when you graduated high school, was it a big deal?
Oh, yeah, it was a huge deal.
Right. They make it a big deal. They sit there, they go through the ceremony, they give you the piece of paper, they play pomp and circumstance, they do the whole thing because it gives you that feeling of, I have become an adult. It's the bar mitzvah. This is my rite of passage.
Yeah, sure. It's putting the gold star stamp on okay, you're ready for the next step in life.
Right. When you got that diploma, did you become any smarter?
Mm-mm.
No.
Well, maybe.
Right. Maybe a little bit. But, the point is that we do these rituals because it makes us feel better about things, or because it gets us excited, it gets us in the right headspace, it moves us into the place we need to be. And so so these guys, when they do their crazy stuff and everybody gets together and has some kind of sex magic or, they do these rituals, all it means is that they are putting themselves in kind of a transformational self. It's like a graduation ceremony versus a real religious ceremony where you feel that you are communing with God. To them, it's just representative that they're doing something for themselves.
Okay.
So, but they do it in the form of magic. So it sounds like fun. It's like, we're going to do magic. Like, what's going to happen? Is somebody going to show up and do some card tricks? Or what? Nobody does card tricks at a satanic that I know of.
So it's kind of like the same type of thing as The Secret or something, where you're trying to use your thoughts to manifest something, but it's not necessarily literal, but it sounds like it's literal the way they pitch it to you.
Yeah, I would say The Secret is actually a lot like Satanism, because you're trying to make something appear. You're doing things for yourself. The Secret, you fake it till you make it. Or
it's all about what do you want out of your life?
Yeah, the manifestation, visualization of something, and right, you're not really doing The Secret for somebody else. You're not saying I'm going to fake it till they make it.
It's a personal self-help kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's a lot what Satanism is. It's selfishness as a virtue. It is that. And we have some famous Satanists too.
Okay, I was wondering how this was going to tie into the entertainment world, because
I mean, first of all, Anton LaVey was a musician. He had, I mean, he was a local celebrity through his paranormal research, and he performed as an organist. Guests into his, he had guys like the Forrest J. Ackerman, who was the editor of the famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, which is a big geek magazine in through a lot of the second half of the 20th century, were people that used to come to his parties where he'd play songs. And I mean, he was a fun guy. People thought of Anton LaVey, even with the bald head and the goatee and everything, and the occult rituals, like a fun guy. And the Church of Satan. And so there was a lot of celebrities who dabbled in it. Number one, we've got Jane Mansfield. So Jane Mansfield, 1950s ingenue, very Marilyn Monroe type, busty, sex. She'd find her way into different kind of. So she was like the Kim Kardashian in like the 1950s, okay. Really. And so, and Sophia Loren, the famous Italian actress, just came out with a book this past couple of weeks. And there's this famous picture of Sophia Loren. There's a party for Sophia Loren. Jane Mansfield shows up, and she's got a nip slip.
No.
And they take this picture as Sophia Loren just looks down and is Jane,
I saw that.
And it's Jane Mansfield's nip slip. And she's talking about how she'll never, she's 80 some years old, and she's like, and she still looks great.
Yeah.
But she never signs the picture or whatever, because she's like, well, this was a party for me, and Jane Mansfield showed up and upstaged it.
Okay, thanks. Now I don't have to click on that link that said, you'll never believe what she said.
Yeah, she just said
happening in this picture.
Right, that she's just not interested in Jane's Mansfield. I mean, and Sophia Loren was this girl, she was no shrinking violet. I mean,
right.
She wasn't afraid that, get nude or whatever she needed to do for a role. She just, Italians, they're down with that. Euros.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, Jane Mansfield we'll talk about, because she has a house that's haunted and cursed.
Okay, so that's a future topic that we can
We'll
explore.
be talking about the curse of Jane Mansfield's Hollywood home in a future episode. But Jane Mansfield was somebody who had hung out with Anton LaVey.
Okay,
Had these
so
kind
she was
of
in the fold.
The virtuous selfishness, interested in Satanism, interested in these different kinds of things. It wasn't scary to these people because they realized nobody was going to sacrifice a baby to the devil. That wasn't real. They were going to do things for themselves.
And it, like you were saying before, it sounds scary to us because we were kids at the time when it was being,
yeah, that you thought that people
advertised
were being
as
sacrificed to the devil. What?
Right. Okay, so who else do we have here? Aside from Jane Mansfield.
Milwaukee's finest, Liberace.
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah, he also, he was a fellow piano player like Anton LaVey.
Okay. Of course, yeah.
And Liberace also, did you see that Behind the Candelabra movie with Michael Douglas playing Liberace?
No, I wanted to, though.
It's great. It's got Scott Bakula in it.
What?
Yeah, no, Scott Bakula's in it.
So it's good?
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's great. Well, okay. It depends how you feel about Michael Douglas and gay sex scenes.
Sure. Well, that's fine. I mean,
I'm down. So it's a really good movie. And it's really interesting the interplay of Liberace and his young lovers and how he felt so like any kind of aging person. They lose their youth, they lose their vigor, all those kind of things that makes them who they are. And Liberace was somebody who associated with the Church of Satan too. He was no stranger to pleasures of the flesh. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you think like Liberace, like who's safer, who's more fun, who's hanging out with the Church of Satan. Then you get to somebody associated like Sammy Davis Jr.
Whoa.
Right. And
I had no idea.
Well, Sammy Davis was a famous convert to Judaism. But he also, he was just somebody who was interested in these rituals and these things, baby. And and so he had hung out with Anton LaVey in the early 70s on a bunch of occasions. And he was, declared a member of the Church of Satan. And I believe Sammy Davis Jr. even played the devil in a movie. So, or a TV show. Hold on, let me look it up real quick. But yeah, Sammy Davis played the devil in like a TV show. And that was right around the same time. When you talk about, famous people with creepy shit, Sammy Davis and the devil. He was in a pilot called Poor Devil. That was with Batman Adam West. And the Christopher Lee as Lucifer. And so it didn't make it as a TV show. But Anton LaVey made Sammy Davis Jr. a full-fledged card-carrying warlock of the Church of Satan. Yes!
Who would have thought? I mean, when you see him dancing and singing and drinking his cocktails on stage, that's really not something that I would think.
Well, he released an album.
Associated with.
He released an album called Satan Swings, baby.
Okay. I guess the blatant obvious clue there went right past me.
You think Sammy Davis was into Satanism? No, baby. Featured ditties like Sympathy for the Devil and Devil in Disguise, as well as a duet with Anton LaVey himself. So he broke off, and he eventually talked about breaking off to it and wasn't into it later. But he certainly was involved in the 70s. I mean, Sammy Davis, one of the most famous people of the late 20th century. I mean, I'd say he's the most famous person to associate with the Church of Satan. And as we go on, there's guys like King Diamond. King Diamond's a heavy metal artist who is associated with a band called Merciful Fate. He's Scandinavian, which means he's a little bit crazy anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas crazy.
Okay. The heavy metal, that sounds like something that you'd be like, okay, that's not like shocking. I don't know.
No, it's not. But the fact is that most people who are involved in heavy metal, like Ozzy, Ozzy and the Prince of Darkness. But Ozzy's a Christian who's got a cross around his neck. He grew up Christian. Like, Ozzy might use the trappings of that as a character, but he doesn't believe in Satanism or anything like that. The guys in Motley Crue used upside down, the pentagrams. They used pentagrams and upside down crosses on the Shout at the Devil album.
I just saw them last week, and I was curious why there were pentagrams all over the place. Like,
yeah, because that was the Shout at the Devil album. Used pentagrams and used all that kind of stuff.
I mean, their whole stage. It's like the lighting thing is a giant pentagram. It's overwhelming.
So they used that kind of stuff back in the early 80s to shock parents, to make kids, to make Motley Crue seem more dangerous than they were,
Sure, yeah.
But those guys don't give a darn about Satan. I mean, they certainly are plenty selfish. I mean, Vince Neil killed a guy in a drunk driving accident. Yeah. Nikki Sixx done enough heroin to kill probably this entire floor of my apartment building.
Yeah.
But as far as actual people dealing with Satan, no, the pentagrams are a joke. King Diamond, however, actually was a real Satanist. Real anti-God, anti-religion kind of guy. And he brings up the next one, which is Marilyn Manson.
Nice.
So Marilyn Manson is the same guy, used that kind of trapping. I mean, first of all, what his whole band originally was taking a serial killer's last name or a famous killer's last name along with a supermodel's first name.
Right.
So Marilyn Monroe, Charles Manson, Marilyn Manson.
Was he like a real legitimate Satanist, or was that just part of the show? Because obviously, you've seen his videos and you hear the songs and it's like, okay, this is definitely
sure.
I mean, it doesn't seem like he's the most. I could see him like just having breakfast at Panera or like.
Oh yeah, no, I think that
not.
I think that Marilyn Manson, and it's funny with like his ex-wives and stuff like that, always call him Brian. because his real name is Brian Warner or whatever. His ex-wives are always like, yeah, well, Brian likes to do this, or Brian likes to do that. That's how Courtney Love calls him too, as kind of they belittle him by saying, well, yeah, Brian's
he probably doesn't love that.
Right. Stop calling me Brian. I'm Marilyn Manson, man.
But so he actually followed that church?
Well, he flirted with the Church of Satan and being a Satanist. Okay. So
it's not just a shtick.
He's anti-Christian.
Oh,
so when he uses the shtick of upside down crosses or pentagrams, it's definitely anti-church. Uh-huh. So Marilyn Manson is against the church and against, there's a numerous amount of reasons to be against the church in any particular way, shape, or form. Religion, has killed a lot of people over the course of millennia. And religion also, has people believing in things that sometimes they do crazy stuff. And they also oppress other people in the name of it. So Marilyn Manson was more about being anti-church than maybe the virtue of selfishness. So, but he definitely was someone, he'd met with Anton LaVey, and so
he practiced what he preached. He wasn't just doing it for album sales to get dangerous things out there that kids would buy.
Correct. He wasn't Motley Crue. So when he went on and he did the whole thing, remember he was in the MTV Music Awards and he pretended to be like at a pulpit and he delivers this anti-Christian screed and then he turns around, he's got his butt cheeks out. You remember? Come on, you remember Marilyn Manson's butt cheeks? Who can forget those cheeks?
The palest of white.
Oh God! And
Neon cheeks.
That's ballsy. You have to have a decent looking butt. I wouldn't have done it. I would have worked out a little bit or something, or shaped it up, or made sure I put some Clearasil on or something before I did that on MTV. Hey, I'm not showing my butt on MTV. Marilyn Manson is. Somebody execute him.
All right. So where were we now? Who's anyone else we haven't covered yet?
Those are the big ones. Modern Satanism, they do a lot of things that just try to upset Christian churches. What they're trying to do is also in the South, they mix up, so they put 10 Commandment statues in certain Capitol buildings.
Yeah.
And so, like in Oklahoma, what the Satanists try to do was create a statue of like one of their satanic idols with kids around him.
Oh, nice.
And do it at the same place as they were doing the 10 Commandments statue.
All right.
So they were trying to do that. So the Oklahoma Satanists had done that because what they're saying is, if you're going to put a 10 Commandments statue in this government building, we should be able to put our religious statue.
Yeah, freedom of religion.
Of course, according to the First Amendment. This was a big... So I think about this because when I lived in La Crosse, Wisconsin, there was a 10 Commandments statue on public land. And this had gone to the Supreme Court about whether or not you could have a statue that glorifies one religion over another on public land. So eventually what happened was the city had to sell a piece of that land to private property, to a private individual so that they could have that.
Yeah, so it's not paid for by the government and
correct,
sponsoring a specific religion.
So when they had this statue of the 10 Commandments in the Oklahoma Capitol, the Oklahoma Satanists said, nope, we got to have one of our satanic demon Baphomet sitting beneath an inverted pentagram and flanked by 2 children gazing upward in loyalty. When it was finished, it will be cast in bronze and the Satanists' hope eventually displayed in Oklahoma. And it's a response to the 10 Commandments monument outside the Capitol.
So they're still building it or planning it? It's not actually there yet?
No, it's not. It's not. They have built a model of the statue, but I think what's really going to happen is eventually they're going to get rid of that 10 Commandments statue.
That's a much easier solution. Otherwise,
the Church of Satan but that's the whole thing.
And then everybody, then pretty soon the place is just going to be full of statues for every different religion or.
Right. And that's the thing. And that's what a lot of the modern Satanists do because they're closer to atheists. than they are closer to people who worship the devil. What they're interested in is making sure that Christianity stays out of government, stays out of public life, things like that. So that's what a lot of modern Satanists do. So the Church of Satan, I think when we say the final thing, is it sinister or is it selfish? Well, I would just say it's just selfish. Nothing to worry about. There might be devil worshippers in the world.
You heard the verdict here, folks.
But there might be devil worshippers in the world, but they are certainly not trying to put up a statue of Baphomet in the Oklahoma State Capitol.
Well, that's pretty interesting stuff. I had no idea. I guess I was still in the mindset of the 80s kid that saw Sally Jesse Raphael having a shout out with some dudes that look like metal rockers. And now you guys know more about one of Mike's favorite topics, apparently.
No, I just figure that it's pretty interesting to talk about Satanism because it really does have to, it really does not have to do with all the things that we thought it had to do as kids. So there are people out there who can have real discussions, and they can discuss things as atheists or as people that believe in rituals that aren't necessarily dangerous to humanity, no matter what the movies tell you, or Sally Jesse.
Very interesting. Well, we do have a song to share with you today that is related to the topic, but before we do that, you can find the show notes for today's episode, including lyrics to that song, at othersidepodcast.com/9. And Mike, what's today's song about? The song that we're going to release tonight?
Well, today is perfect for our discussion because this song is called The Sun King. And there was no one more selfish in the way of he represented the entire state of France than Louis XIV, the Sun King himself, the man that said, "I am the state." Here's the track.
Eternal and breathtaking, and given divine right. I am the state in all her glory, and I'm the essence of this life. I am the seed, blessed by heaven to satisfy all your hope and all your need. Perpetual engine of the ascension, a jealous tyrant of your affection. I am the fulcrum, you are the lever. I am the spark that goes on forever. The center of the universe. I stand divine, I stand alone. So love me like no one else. I stand divine, I stand alone. I am your brother. I am your mother. I am your lover. I am everything you need. Near or far, you're part of me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at OthersidePodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.